Hello and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been quite a while since I posted anything, but I do have some larger projects that I'm working on. They're just taking quite a while. I do hope to have them out soon, but in the meantime, I have some smaller projects like this one that I'm working to release as they get completed. I really wasn't planning on making a Fruits Baskets video at all just because of how emotionally invested I am in the series, but I did end up reading a post a while back that inspired me to make this video, so here we go. I will add a brief disclaimer here at the beginning that I'm going to be covering some major spoilers to the series, so if you have not completed the anime or manga at this time, I suggest returning to this video after you've finished. But of course, if you don't care about spoilers or you want a sneak peek into the series, you're welcome to join as well. Alright, so let's get into it. So here reads the post in question. Here's a Fruits Baskets hot take absolutely no one was asking for. Toru is a kind person. Kureno is a nice person, but he is not a kind one. And the difference may seem minor to the point of insignificance, but it means everything for his importance to both the meta text and the narrative proper. Okay, so let's start with Toru and Kureno. In order to talk about how Toru is kind and Kureno is nice but not kind, I think it's important to note that these characters are compared to each other in canon, which is something this series does a lot. Like, these comparisons are not just something that the readers/watchers are picking up on through subtext, but that the actual characters within the story are commenting on these comparisons themselves. For example, Arisa introduces Kureno to us as someone who is like Toru, in the way that they are both clumsy, friendly idiots, which is definitely a comical and surface level comparison, but it's being handed to us. Like, we really don't need to look for it. We're being told from the beginning that there is something to compare between Toru and Kureno. I think it's the extension of this initial comparison that causes people to investigate their similarities and differences further, and to come up with conclusions like Toru is kind and Kureno is nice but not kind. And these really simple conclusions have big impacts on our understanding of the story, at least enough to where I had to wake up in the middle of the night to start writing this. Like, okay. So, in order to truly dive into why Toru is kind and Kureno is only nice, we need to look at their relationships with others. So, the initial relationships that I'm going to be highlighting are Toru and Kyo, Kureno and Akito, and the former cat's wife with the former cat. And I'll point out that the reason why I've organized the chart in this way is because everyone on the top is a normal human and everyone on the bottom is bound by the curse, which I think is a really important dynamic to address in this discussion. So, Toru loves Kyo, right? Like, big heart eyes, she's big about him, like, okay, we get it. But for a character like Kazuma, whose grandfather was the former Zodiac cat, he does worry that Toru may only love Kyo out of pity. Because for Kazuma himself, he adopted Kyo initially out of guilt for rejecting his own grandfather's kindness when he was a child. But for Kazuma, he also understands that his love for Kyo was able to grow past pity, and he truly loves Kyo as if he was his own son. But it's still hard for Kazuma to get past that he knows that the former cat's wife only married his grandfather out of sympathy for his situation, and that it might have brought his grandfather some joy, but she never truly loved him. So it's understandable that Kazuma would be worried that Toru might harbor these same seemingly kind but unintentionally harmful feelings for Kyo. And Kazuma does express these concerns to Rin and Kagura, so we do have a direct comparison being made in canon between Toru and the former cat's wife. So now that we have that comparison, I'd like to circle back to the chart and bring Kureno back into the picture. Okay, so we have our canon comparisons being made between Toru and Kureno and Toru and the former cat's wife. Now, I would like to take a step further from what's being explicitly stated in the canon between characters and compare Kureno to the former cat's wife. So, if we compare the relationship between the former cat's wife and the former cat to Kureno's relationship with Akito, we get something very interesting. So if we take a look at what happened when Kureno's curse broke, Akito cried and Kureno stayed. And the reason why Kureno stayed is because he felt pity for Akito. And he even reiterates this to Toru by describing Akito as a sad, vulnerable girl, someone in need of his protection. And Kureno never really mentions anything that he loves about her, and I don't mean that in a romantic way, but more of like, he doesn't really mention anything that he finds compelling about her, which is worrisome. Like, it really doesn't seem like Kureno wants to form a real bond with Akito. He just kind of stays because he feels obligated to protect her. which I think is a good segue into the discussion of what all of this means for Akito. Now, we don't get to know a whole lot about the former cat or if he knew if his wife had married him out of pity and what effect that even would have had on him, but we do get to know a lot more about Akito. We know that she was raised as a special child, told her whole life that the Zodiac were all there for her, and that she was the center of their everlasting and unbreakable bond. And the only one around her that challenged this idea was Ren, which is, well, complicated and chaotic in itself because Ren doesn't really offer a healthy counter to this idea. She just kind of tells Akito that their bond is corrupt, and she doesn't really add anything constructive to her argument, which just led to Akito rejecting Ren's claim and concluding that Ren is just jealous of not only her bond with the Zodiac, but with Akira as well. And we know that Akira is the main point of consternation between the two, but for Akito, Akira complicates her whole relationship with the idea of bonds. So, for starters, Akira is the one that told Akito that she was special and that her bond with the Zodiac was eternal. And then he passes away. Like, Akito is left with the box that the maids gave her that said to contain her father's soul. That way they can always be together forever. And so Akito entangles the myth of the Zodiac's eternal bond with the grief towards the loss of her father. And then Kureno's curse breaks, and Akito is understandably scared and confused. Kureno's curse breaking means that not all bonds are eternal, and that not only jeopardizes what her father told her, but threatens the validity of his continued existence within the box. So Kureno has two healthy options at this point. He can either stay and attempt to form a new bond with Akito, or he can leave. And I think both of these options are completely valid. Choosing to stay would lend both Kureno and Akito the opportunity to learn that you don't need supernatural bonds to become close with someone. While on the flip side, choosing to leave would not only grant Kureno his freedom, but force Akito to confront the idea that not all bonds are everlasting, and that makes the ones that we're able to make and maintain even more amazing. But Kureno doesn't do either. He chooses to stay, but not because he wants to, but because he thought it was better for Akito's sake. And I really begin to agree with the bastard man Shigure when he tells Kureno, you should have left. Like, Kureno failed to seek out a genuine connection with Akito, so I think it would have been healthier for the both of them if he had just left. Or stayed until he realized he wasn't interested in forming a bond with Akito and then leave, or even leave from the start and then return if he ever wants to reconnect with Akito. But staying for the sake of staying only reestablishes the original corrupt terms of the curse all over again, and it's not helping anyone. So we've talked a lot about Akito at this point, and I'd really like to bring Toru back into the conversation. And I'm going to start by bringing up Rin's question to Toru of, what is the most important thing to you? Like, Toru really isn't able to answer this question at this time because what's sprouting in her heart doesn't match what she's decided should be most important to her. Like, Toru starts to recognize that she loves Kyo and that he's quickly becoming the most important person to her. But all of this violates the promise she made to herself and to her mom to keep her as the closest person in her heart. And this, is all to try and keep their bond alive and in a way to keep her mom alive. So Toru is trapped by the same eternal bond as the Zodiac, and this only reinforces the idea that Toru and Akito are two sides of the same coin. They're both relying on the idea of an eternal bond to counter their grief. And for Toru, who is simultaneously processing the loss of her mother against her growing love for Kyo, she's defensive of this new bond. She doesn't want the curse or anyone else to take Kyo from her. And so Toru actively seeks out to break the curse that Akito clings to. And again, Akito is clinging to this curse because she believes that these empty bonds are the only way to keep people close to her. And I think one of the biggest connections Toru and Akito have with each other is not only the incredible losses that they have encountered, but that they both understand how incredibly lonely life can be and how devastating it can be to be abandoned. So, in the moment in the rain, when Akito shows up at Shigure's house to confront Toru and essentially tell her that Toru won over her, and does this make her happy? And Akito is finally shedding these deep feelings that allow Toru to truly see Akito for the first time. And Knowing that grief, that loneliness, that fear of being abandoned, Toru is able to say, I know how it feels to be left behind. She recognizes that Akito being made special puts her above the circle, but never part of it. And so Akito has always been isolated, even within the group that she's supposed to be the center of. And as Akito runs away from Toru and towards the cliff, she says that she doesn't want to be surrounded by strangers. And Toru is receptive to this. She extends out a hand to Akito, literally, like she's offering a new beginning to start over, and actually reintroduces herself to Akito. Whereas just a few moments before this, Kureno offered like Akito the same new beginning. But as Akito said, it's too late. And I actually can't remember how old Akito was when Kureno's curse broke, but I know that she was a child, and at this point in the story, she's a full-fledged adult. So I'm going to calculate about 10 years, give or take there, by just how she looks from the beginning to how she looks now. But in any case, it's a lot of time that's passed, and that's a lot of missed opportunity for these kind of new beginnings to have formed. And I think this is largely due to the fact that Kureno's efforts towards Akito have been based off of sympathy and not empathy. And I don't actually think Kureno begins to exhibit empathy towards Akito until he leaves. Because I think it's the first time that he understands how Akito is feeling and what's the best choice for both of them moving forward. And I think empathy is what ends up being attractive about Toru to Akito. She can really feel that Toru is being genuine with her. Akito feels seen by Toru, and that made her feel less alone. And Toru's offering of friendship really orients both of their focuses towards the future, which is something they both desperately need. So I guess that's my hot take, expanding on that one post and my response to the idea that Toru is kind and Kureno is nice but not kind. And I think it really boils down to the whole empathy versus sympathy argument. So I think that's all for now. I might make more Fruits Facets videos in future, but they'll just have to wait because I have those other projects that I'm working on. I'm sorry again that they are taking me so long to complete. Thank you to everybody that watched my Landed Lustrous video, and to everybody that is liked, comment, and subscribed. It makes me so happy to see the support. I do read every single comment. I am just so surprised that people liked it. So I hope you like this video as well. Anyways, I will be saying goodbye for now. This has been Artisanal Fruits. I'm signing off, and I hope you have a fantastic fucking day.